Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Red Barn Radio. I'm Renee Collins. Red Barn Radio is now in its 17th broadcast season, and tonight is Red Barn Radio's 655th live concert performance. Tonight, we present Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson. By day, Dr. Holm-Hudson is a professor of music theory at the University of Kentucky. By night, he plays keyboards and is also an active solo songwriter in his own right. Growing up on the mean suburban streets of Wilmington, Delaware, Dr. Holm-Hudson channels his unresolved middle-class angst and hormone-hijacked adolescence into his tuneful and articulate songs. We are so pleased to welcome Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson and the Adjuncts to the Red Barn stage.
Let's try that again. False start. And color of my dreams, in the torrent of energy sweeping me in its stream, in the silence where I hear the voice of my soul, in the vortex where I willingly give up control. Myself rising so high I can almost reach past the horizon, on the edge of the verge of the threshold of almost there, in the trembling air. In the earth cloud of speed of a galloping horse, in the wind that uproots with a hurricane force, in the heat of the passion of lovers' embrace, in the story I read upon each stranger's face. Spirit moves with the speed of a spark that can fan to a flame hidden deep in the dark, and the moth circles in, all entranced by the bright light's glare, in the trembling air. Of laughter exchanged with a friend, in the hum of excitement that never will end, in the song that enfolds you in the warmth of its tone, in the whisper that tells you you're never alone. In the moment when grace catches you by surprise, in the sparkle of life when I look in your eyes, the assurance that no one is finally beyond repair, in the trembling air. And on and on and on and on the dance whirls around, in a mad cavalcade of color and sound that cascades all around, I swear, in the trembling air. In the trembling air. In the trembling air. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening. and welcome to Red Barn Radio. Wherever in the world you're listening, welcome to the music of Kentucky. The stations listed on Red Barn Radio's main page and many others also stream Red Barn Radio to your computers and portable listening devices. Visit Lex, Lexington, Kentucky's Convention and Visitors Bureau. Planning a visit to Lexington or just looking for more information, Visit Lex is on the web at visitlex.com. We're more than just bluegrass. Red Barn Radio is brought to you with the help of the folks at LexArts, who provide Red Barn Radio with this great performance hall and also oversee and develop a wide range of programming initiatives. We also thank their president and CEO, Nan Plummer. LexArts, creating a great American city inspired by the arts. We'd like to thank Chef Craig Scott and Broussard's Delta Kitchen for supplying food each week for our guest artists and volunteers. Located on Main Street in historic Georgetown, Kentucky, Broussard's Delta Kitchen features the authentic flavors of New Orleans and the Mississippi Delta, and live music every weekend. Listen locally, working in concert to encourage everyone to embrace any opportunity to listen locally and engage with each other in a variety of shared experiences, including music, theater, poetry, dialogue, and conversation. You can learn more about Listen Locally on Facebook, Instagram, and at listenlocally.net. The Griffin Gate Marriott Resort and Spa is Red Barn Radio's guest accommodation partner, providing hotel accommodations for our musical guests. The Griffin Gate Marriott Resort and Spa is the ideal choice for your next visit to Lexington, Kentucky. Remember, you can follow Red Barn Radio on Twitter and hopefully like us on Facebook. Now here again is the host of Red Barn Radio to tell you more about tonight's performance.
It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson to Red Barn Radio. Dr. Holm-Hudson is joined for his show by his friends, the Adjuncts. Scott Cave on bass, David Chappie Chapman on drums and percussion, and guest musicians Roberta Guthrie, cello, and Dan Ward, Native American flutes and whistles. That sounds fantastic, doesn't it? Let's get back to the music and welcome to the Red Barn stage, Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson and the Adjuncts.
Sometimes when I write a song, I write it from the perspective of a particular genre, like what it would be like to write a particular song that would be done by some other artist. And that's what this next one was. It was originally it was my attempt to write a Grateful Dead song. Now, I don't know if I quite came out with that in the end, especially because the rhyme scheme turned out to be very playful. It's kind of an A, B, B, C, C, D, D, A rhyme scheme, which I don't think the Grateful Dead ever messed with. So this is a song called Iridescent Blue. The sky was iridescent blue when I awoke to my surprise, and suddenly I realized that I had lived this life before. In the sky an open door was beckoning to me, and now with clarity I knew one day I must go walking through. I've seen the past and the future now before us, and I have to say that neither one is looking good right now. But then I see the door, and I know it means escape. In the cold and gray of a working day, my dreams are iridescent blue. Inside the dead saloon are the ghosts of memories. They come floating on the breeze, and then they slowly disappear with the passing of the years. The ghosts come back and settle in, and they remind you where you've been. By the light of the harvest moon, one day I'll pass through that door of the spirit. But until then, I am abandoned here below. But even then I know, from the pictures that I've seen, And from up in space, this earthly place is shining iridescent blue. And when I first laid eyes on you, I knew that it was destiny, that you'd be coming home with me, and that my wicked luck would change, but everything was prearranged. The dice was loaded from the start. I'd already lost my heart, just to find that you were untrue, like a poker hand given by a crooked dealer. You already know how the game is going to end, but I can still call you my friend and my partner in bad luck. In the cold design of the neon sign, your eyes look iridescent blue. In the cold design of the neon sign, your eyes look iridescent blue. Thank you. Thanks very much. So, I don't know. You think it was a Dead song? Okay, good. All right. Every songwriter, I think, sometimes tells stories, you know, and sometimes the stories are true, sometimes they're based on truth, sometimes they're completely fictitious. This one, I suppose, is based on truth, although not completely. It was inspired actually driving back on a trip from Nashville and basically going through, if we're going up I-75 north, just there's seems to be very little between, say, Nashville and Bowling Green. You're kind of driving past all these fields, and it was wintertime, so there was really nothing happening out, you know, on the fields. But beyond the fields, I knew there were small towns. And so this is another kind of picture of hard times in a small town, and it's a song called Nothing in Between. Frost on the field beneath an ashen moon, where the kudzu has overrun. A torn and faded flag that reads, God bless America, underneath the cold gray sun. An abandoned factory crumbles into dust and broken glass beside a rusted railroad track. I haven't seen my country around here lately, and I wonder what it will take to bring it back. Cold morning desperation when you wake up from a dream and find everything around you is nothing like it seems. The rich get richer while the poor get religion. And somehow there's nothing in between. Rolls a shopping cart down an empty alley, holding everything she's ever known. I sit on my stoop at night and stare across the valley, wondering when they're gonna foreclose on my home. Folks on the TV live their glamorous lives, and they don't look or sound like anyone I know. There used to be a reason to get up in the morning, but that was somewhere else a dream. Find everything around you is nothing like it seems. The rich get richer while the poor get religion. And somehow there's nothing in between. Desperation when you wake up from a dream and find everything around you is nothing like it seems. The rich get richer while the poor get religion. Somehow there's nothing in between. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So, this next one is based on a real-life experience. The house that we moved into had a garage that was about 70 years old, and at some point during the Second World War, they added to the back of the garage and put in a chicken coop. Pigeons for the war, you know. Go pigeons. But of course, when you're building a chicken coop, you don't put too much thought into things like foundation, insulation, quality, roofing material. And so that part of the garage in the back started to get a lot of water damage, and eventually about the only thing we could do was to take down the back of it. So called a few friends, including David Boom Boom Chappie Chapman over here, who gleefully helped with the sledgehammering of the back wall and whatnot. So we spent a good part of that afternoon loading up debris into one of those big, trailer things. And while we're sifting through, cleaning up just the debris in the back, the little pieces of wood and whatnot, Chappie all of a sudden goes, "Whoa!" jumps back, and there in the dirt is this unexploded shotgun shell. And so we started digging a lot more carefully through there, and we ended up finding about 30 shotgun shells and 40 shiny bullets, and I can't tell you what caliber they were, but they were long and pointy. And we found out, or Chappie found out, because he's also our resident munitions expert, that the gunpowder in the shotgun shells, at least, was still live. So that led to this song, which is called "Bullets in the Backyard." Find the darndest things just digging around the backyard of a shotgun shack on the edge of town. Some empty whiskey bottles and a broken G.I. Joe tell the tale of a family that lived here long ago. Secrets that are buried can come out into the light. A heavy rainstorm that erodes the soil just right. Dig around the fence line and they'll start to show exhumed, copper-colored and glistening by the light of the moon. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. Some say they were used for hunting, though no one knows what they were hunting for. An impromptu burgoo from the times when the living was poor. Perhaps they were a souvenir from fighting overseas. Speculation comes with excavation by degrees. Perhaps they were for settling some neighborly dispute. The past is buried now, so the point is probably moot. Who knows what family secrets lie in the hearts of men? It's how they settled things. It was a different time back then. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. Old suburban shrapnel can be the worst kind. Everyone likes to look sophisticated and refined, but the recoil can be nasty and difficult to control. A long-forgotten rumor can blow a hole right through your soul. You don't get many answers if you ask around these parts. Don't ask so many questions is advice you should take to heart. Handle the truth as gently as those bullets in your hand. You don't want something to blow up that you would never understand. Darling, no one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. No one ever talks about the bullets in the backyard. Thank you, everyone. True history. And now it's time to share with you another episode of True History. Once I make sure that yeah, guitar is still in tune. That's good. Take this thing out in the rain, you never know what's going to happen. But yes, this next one actually is with one of our special guests tonight. I'd like to welcome Roberta Guthrie to the stage. Roberta will be joining us on cello, which automatically just elevates the class factor. I mean, you know, you bring a cello anywhere, and all of a sudden it just becomes a very refined evening. But yes, this song is based on a bit of true history, or at least kind of my speculation of true history. It's about the great Spanish cellist Pablo Casals, who, when he was a young musician, rediscovered and provided the first modern recordings of Bach's cello suites, which were a very difficult set of pieces for solo cello, not very often played. And his performances of these pieces are still like benchmark recordings. You can still get them today. They're still in print. But what struck me about the recordings is that he started recording the cycle in 1936. And 1936 was when the Spanish Civil War broke out. And at the time, Casals was living just across the Spanish border in exile, but obviously in close proximity, seeing what was happening to his country. And I can imagine that recording these things was a difficult process. It took some 3 years, which means that by the time he finished the last recordings in the cycle of the cello suites, it was 1939, and World War II had broken out. So the image I had here was of this young idealistic musician who was recording these pieces and trying to preserve culture when everything in society around him was just crumbling. And so this song is called Portrait of Casals, and it's based on a Bach cello piece and shamelessly lifts a chord progression from Bach. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that again. That's me. False start. Stiff fingers. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. In his studio, young Pablo rosins up his cello bow. It's 1936 in Catalonia. Soon all of Europe will explode. Passion and technique again combine in a flowing arabesque of line. You have to hold on to aspirations. You have to hold on to inspirations. You have to hold on to being human, even while your country burns. In his studio, young Pablo makes some markings in his pages. Fingers dance across the rosewood. Soaring sound across the ages. The generals keep a different score. Not from music, but from war. You have to hold on to aspirations. You have to hold on to inspirations. You have to hold on to being human, even while your country burns. Pablo decodes an ancient message that was written long ago. From composer to the student, mediated by the bow. He tries not to think about the plains. The music's all that remains. You have to hold on to aspirations. You have to hold on to inspirations. You have to hold on to being human, even while your country burns. You have to hold on to being human, even while your country burns. Roberta Guthrie, ladies and gentlemen.
Great job, Roberta. Well, that's a great start. Now here's Red Barn Radio's Brad Becker to speak with Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson.
Hello, Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson.
Hello there.
It's nice to see you, and so glad you could be on the program tonight. I was thinking, since we may not have an opportunity to speak directly to your bandmates, maybe you could speak on their behalf, at least.
They all think I'm wonderful.
Okay, good.
Next question.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe you could tell their bios on their behalf.
Absolutely. Well, I have known Chappie, David Chapman, for close to 20 years. We played in bands together. We got driven out of churches together. We've jammed and gone into strange musical territories together, and so he's one of my go-to musicians in any kind of situation. And when the opportunity came to put together a band, the Adjuncts actually was a band that was put together specifically for this show, for Red Barn Radio. I'd been doing a lot of music as a solo artist, and when the opportunity came to do Red Barn Radio, it was suggested that it might be fun to work with a band, and so of course Chappie was my first choice. Finding a bass player was a bit more difficult because a lot of, being the summertime, a lot of the musicians I knew were traveling and things like that. But Chappie knew Scott from years back. They had been in a band together. I'm not exactly sure how many years back they had played, but it had been quite a long time. But he was somebody that Chappie thought of right away. And so I sent demos out, sent charts, and when we had our first rehearsal, it was just like we all just hit it off so well. And so Scott lives near Alexandria, Kentucky. And
Where's that?
it is northern Kentucky, not too far from Cincinnati, Covington area. But what I know about it is that it's a long, meandering drive off of the interstate.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't recall seeing any Alexandria signs on 75.
No, it's a bit of a drive to get up there, a bit of a drive for him to come down and join us. But that's, I think, testimony to his dedication and fortitude and the fact that he tolerates us.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm just impressed that you got the decal on the kick drum so quickly after.
Well, if I can give a shout out to that logo is courtesy of my friend Steve Broderson, with whom I play in a band called the Twiggenberries. It's a British pop rock cover band. And I knew Steve was a terrific graphic artist, and so I said, we need a logo that can go in a drum head. And he said, any ideas? And I said, well, something with a vintage look, and should probably have a mortarboard hat on it. And I think a day or two later, he sends me this great mock-up. And he's like, how about this? I'm like,
I like it.
That's great. So,
I like it.
Steve Broderson is the person that came up with that logo.
Well, all right. Way to go, Steve. And so Roberta just joined you on cello on Portrait of Casals, and then later on will be Dan Ward. Tell us about how you came to know Roberta and Dan.
Blessings. In the case of Roberta, she and I go to the same Quaker meeting, Lexington Friends meeting, here in Lexington, and she brought in her cello to meeting one Sunday. We usually have a time of music before the silent worship, and she led us into worship with, there is a movement from Mahler's Fifth Symphony called the Adagietto. It's just a gorgeous, full lyrical melody, but it basically starts in the cellos and reaches its apex in the violins. When Mahler wrote that, he passed it from instrument section to instrument section. And Roberta played it as a solo, unaccompanied cello piece, taking it all the way up into the violin register. And I heard just, this world-class cello playing, and I just said, wow. So after I had written Portrait of Casals, I asked if she would grace us with playing cello on it, and I wrote a cello part that kind of weaves the Bach cello prelude from the first cello suite with enough tinkerings to make it fit my own chord progression, and so she played that part, and we've played it a few times, but this is certainly the largest audience that we've played it for.
Gotcha. So we all met at the Quaker meeting, and then what about Dan?
Dan, I met through an open mic, Lex Jam open mic, and he came in one time with his flutes and delay pedals and looper pedals and things, and it was just amazing. And so when opportunity came to do a recording of the song that he'll be joining us on tonight, called El Brujo, I invited him into the studio. And it was great because I was working with these just very, very seasoned professional musicians, and Dan comes in with his flutes and just weaves this spell across the studio. And somebody that was in there said, "Where did you find this guy?" And I said, "Open mics."
All right. Well, thanks. Hey, so let's talk about you and about your training and where it all started for you. Did you actually grow up in Delaware?
Yes, I did.
Okay, yeah. And
Yeah.
how did you happen to be in Delaware? Just where your family's located, or?
Yeah, I was born in Wilmington and grew up in Delaware. And then I basically, through high school, and when I went to college, I went to Syracuse University. And that was a situation, people ask me, how'd you wind up in Syracuse? And that was a happy accident. I was a drifting high school senior without a whole lot of discipline or motivation. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with music. And
You did by the time you finished high school, you
Well,
were pretty clear about that?
Well, I didn't know what else I would be doing, basically. I wasn't really thinking about jobs at that point. Actually, my dream situation, what I wanted to do, was I wanted to be like an engineer for albums. It'd be like the person that was like working in the board and studio. And I mentioned this to my guidance counselor. Of course, he just gravitated to engineer. And he's just like, "Oh, well, Carnegie Mellon has a good engineering program." I'm like, I don't want to design bridges. That's not what I mean by engineering, So didn't really get very far with that. But Syracuse sent me a catalog. And it was a great catalog. The School of Music building looked like Hogwarts. I mean, it's just this majestic-looking castle on a hill. I'm serious. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It's Krause College, it's called. It's just an amazing building. I
know it well because I lived there. I went through high school in Syracuse.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I ended up going to Syracuse. And at the time I was a piano performance major because I played piano, and again, I didn't know what else to do. So I was a piano performance major. About the time of my senior year, I realized I wasn't going to make a living doing this because I didn't have, the chops to be a solo pianist virtuoso. But by that time, I had discovered composition, especially composition in 20th century musical styles, experimental music, and so on. And so when I ended up going back to my master's, again at Syracuse, it was for composition. And during my master's study, I got interested in non-Western music and ethnomusicology, and I briefly considered going into that, but I didn't want to do the field work. I didn't want to go to Brazil for 6 years and live in a jungle to record the music.
No.
Too many mosquitoes. So I didn't want to do that. But also one of my teachers had said, well, if you go on ethnomusicology, your bachelor's degree is in piano, your master's degree is in composition, and if you go on to get another degree in ethnomusicology, it's going to look like you don't know what you want to do with your life. So he figured me out. Because ever since high school, I haven't known what I wanted to do with my life. So I ended up going on and continuing to get my doctoral degree in composition at the University of Illinois.
Okay, gotcha.
And so after getting that degree, I was looking for a job for teaching job for about 2 years. The first teaching job that came around was Northwestern.
Here, slow down for a second. Go back to University of Illinois.
Okay.
Tell me about that school. It just seems that there are so many, it seems to me that I've read so many great music books that come out of University of Illinois. Is it the same University of Illinois that you went to?
Yes.
Okay, is it that campus where
There's a University of Illinois in Chicago, but it's much smaller.
Yeah, this is Urbana?
Yeah, Urbana,
Okay.
Champaign. That's where I was. So it had a terrific electronic music and computer music program, fantastic ethnomusicology program. So I got my ethno on while I was there, playing in several ensembles and taking all sorts of classes of music of the world's cultures and whatnot.
Did they also have a traditional music program?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Bluegrass and whatnot.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was thinking like traditional classical music.
Yeah, I was thinking like traditional, the way that sort of Berkeley has their traditional music program.
At the time, they didn't, but there was a traditional music scene there with things like contra dancing and things like that.
Okay.
So there were community groups around the city as much as I remember.
Gotcha. But okay, good. So, but you ended up doing your PhD there.
Of DMA,
Your
actually.
DMA, okay.
Yeah, PhD is a research degree, but for things like composition, where it's a creative degree, it's a Doctor of Musical Arts.
Okay.
Although while I was at Illinois, we all said DMA stood for Dumb Musical Animal.
So follow after Illinois.
Well, after Illinois, was working actually at at a business that did typography for textbooks, basically prepped textbook manuscripts, which turned out to be a really valuable experience for me later. And while I was working for them for 2 years, I was applying for various teaching positions, and the first one that came around was Northwestern University in Evanston, just outside Chicago. Fantastic school, dream job, but it was a lecturer position, like an adjunct, a lecturer position, 2 years renewable, and it was supposed to be only renewable once. So it was supposed to be like 4 years max, but I was there for 6 years. They renewed it an extra time.
What courses were you teaching?
Music theory at
Okay,
that point.
gotcha.
So after going through with all these other things, I ended up teaching music theory. I did direct, the last couple of years I was there, I directed their National High School Music Institute program in composition. So I would work with high school composers that would come and study.
And was that pretty satisfying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you were first teaching music theory, was this to large groups of students?
For the ear training classes, I had what was supposed to be a lecture class, a larger class with about, I think, 50 students, and then they would meet in smaller groups with TAs other times during the week. For the freshman theory class, I think I had about 12 or 13 students. Pretty much an ideal size.
Yeah, and was that challenging as a first teaching assignment?
I had a lot of ideas, so for me it was liberating. It was kind of like, here are the course objectives, here's the syllabus with the schedule. We expect them to know these topics, but how you teach them, that is up to you.
Oh, that's nice.
It was really nice.
Because I would think a lot of musicians in college come to that music theory space, and they think of it sort of as like the dreaded chemistry course in their music curriculum.
Oh yes, they still do. They still do. In the situation with Northwestern, again, I gave them some oddball assignments. Freshmen, you want to start them off on a kind of an interesting sort of weird tack. So one of the first assignments I remember giving them was to write a composition using only one pitch, but make that pitch as interesting as you can. So you only have one note, but you can change the rhythm, you can change the dynamics, you can change the timbre of the sound, you can do the articulation, whether it's staccato, or there are all a number of ways that you can vary this one sound. And so that was one assignment that I remember giving them, which, if you're just starting out in freshman year college, it's a great way just to kind of like wipe the slate clean and start with some fresh ideas.
I'm speaking with Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson. He's here with his group, the Adjuncts, and we're going to come back and do some more conversation, and I'll look forward to talking to you about some of the new directions you've gone in your teaching, and especially in music theory, because that's fascinating. So nice to have you here. Welcome back, Kevin Holm-Hudson and the band, the Adjuncts.
Thank you. I'm going to switch instruments for a moment here. Let's see, make sure we got. All right, so this next song was at least inspired by what I was reading of some contemporary events a year or two ago during the hurricane season, and I think it was Hurricane Florence that was poised to bear down on South Carolina and just cause terrible destruction. And it was in the news a lot, and so I was thinking about what forces of nature can do to the land and how they can just completely change a landscape. Growing up in Delaware, we spent some of our summers along the eastern shore on the border of Delaware and Maryland, and in Ocean City, Maryland, there is an inlet with a channel that was actually cut by a severe storm back in 1962. The land south of Ocean City had been connected to the mainland, but it was ended up separated by this new channels connecting the bay to the ocean that hadn't been there before. So with that, I got thinking about some small town on an island in South Carolina that disappears after the hurricane. And it's a song called The Lost Shore. Storm clouds rolled in, TV news said, if we stayed here, we would likely be dead. So we covered the windows, barred all the doors, and we said goodbye to the lost shore. And we said goodbye to the lost shore, for we knew we'd not return anymore. We said a prayer, we could muster no more, as we said farewell to the lost shore. Poor little bird can't understand why these gale winds won't allow her to land. Like me, she's lost as the rain pours, trying to make her way to the lost shore. And we said goodbye to the lost shore, for we knew we'd not return anymore. We said a prayer, we could muster no more, as we said farewell to the lost shore. Poor little child can't understand why God would not allow her house to stand. The island is gone, not there anymore, just flotsam and jetsam along the lost shore. And we said farewell to the lost shore, for we knew we'd not return anymore. We said a prayer, we could muster no more, as we said farewell to the lost shore. And we said goodbye to the lost shore, for we knew we'd not return anymore. We said a prayer, we could muster no more, as we said farewell to the lost shore. Thank you. Let's try that again. Friday, gray afternoon, humming a tune to see where it leads as it rolls along, forming a song, distracting an escape from the cares of the day. Better to stay and to create. Have I heard this before? Not really sure. My pen hesitates. Everything's still in the song palace. Drink deeply the wine from the musical chalice.
enters the past, showing when and where you were when you first heard the music and words as they first emerged, like a flower in spring, a marvelous thing shivering in the snow of this fragile morn. A new song is born, accept it and watch it grow. They all rejoice in the song palace. Drink deeply the wine from the musical chalice. Skeptics might second guess that a song can bless those with ears to hear the artist's intent, where the song went long after it first appeared. It's not for me to say, let the song have its way, wild, reckless and free, to float on the wind and settle again on those who sing and play. They all rejoice in the song palace. Drink deeply the wine from the musical chalice. Let us return to the song palace. Drink deeply the wine from the musical chalice.
Thank you. That one was called The Song Palace. It's one of several songs that somehow emerge about songwriting. I think I've written several songs about writing songs, which I guess makes them meta songs, something like that. So this next one was inspired by travel. So for people who might be listening to the audio later, I am wearing a shirt from Lund University in Sweden. And in something that like almost never happens, my wife is wearing a matching shirt tonight. But Lund was one of several cities that I've been to in my travels that went sort of into this next song, because when you go to another country and you don't speak the language and you haven't, had the food before, and it's your first time, sort of wandering this old city, you notice how things are different. Like even the quality of the light is different, the colors of the buildings are different, the architecture is different, and it's just a very rich sensory experience. And so this song is about that experience, and it's called Wanderlust. I got the urge to travel, wander some ancient town, set foot on some foreign gravel, find my way around. I want to feed my soul with memories, sounds of the local fair, lose myself in reverie in an old town city square.
seems so sterile. Everyone's just moving on, but my wanderlust is feral. Say the word and I'll be gone. So take one last walk through this town. See the color of the sky as the sun goes down in the fading golden glow. One last look before we go. Cathedral bells are chiming, sounding centuries old. They're celebrating something, a wedding I am told. Some street corner musicians are playing outside a cafe. I'll take their music home with me, in my heart stashed away. And the airport seems so sterile, everyone's just moving on, but my wanderlust is feral. Say the word and I'll be gone. Take one last walk through this town. See the color of the sky as the sun goes down in the fading golden glow. One last look before we go. That I'm away from home, the more my home is here. I want to move to some distant land, quietly disappear. I want the colors, sounds, and tastes, the music of stranger speech. And if you want to try to bring me back, you find that I'm out of reach. And the airport seems so sterile, everyone's just moving on, but my wanderlust is feral. Say the word and I'll be gone. So take one last walk through this town. See the color of the sky as the sun goes down in the fading golden glow. One last look before we go. Thank you, everybody.
Well, welcome one and all. Thanks for joining us on Red Barn Radio. This portion of our program is brought to you with the help of Chef Greg Scott, providing food each week for our volunteers and musical guests. Greg has opened Broussard's Delta Kitchen on Main Street in historic Georgetown, Kentucky. Be sure to check out his menu and get his updates. For more information, Broussard's Delta Kitchen is on Facebook.
Listen locally, working in concert to encourage everyone to embrace any opportunity to listen locally and engage with each other in a variety of shared experiences. You can learn more about Listen Locally on Facebook, Instagram, and at listenlocally.net.
The Griffin Gate Marriott Resort and Spa is Red Barn Radio's guest accommodation partner. It's the ideal choice for your next visit to Lexington, Kentucky.
AccuPrint is Red Barn Radio's print provider. For more information, AccuPrint is on the web at accuprint.us.
And now, everyone, welcome back to the Red Barn Radio. This is our second half of our program this evening. Red Barn Radio is coming to you live from the Performance Hall at Arts Place here in the great city of Lexington, Kentucky. Please welcome back Kevin Holm-Hudson and the Adjuncts.
Thank you. So I've been writing songs for about a year and a half, most of these. And some of the first songs I was writing, I had this crazy idea for a concept album. So there's this 19th century song cycle called Winterreise, Winter Journey, which basically summarizes as boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, things don't work out, boy wanders off into the woods, and it's wintertime, and he hallucinates and dies. cheery romantic song cycle. But I was thinking about that storyline, and I wanted to make it somehow more American, so instead of having him sort of wander off into the woods and freeze to death, I had him go wandering off into the southwestern desert. So it's kind of like, I don't know, Franz Schubert meets Carlos Castaneda or something. But this is one of the songs from that narrative, and he's kind of remembering how things kind of went star-crossed. And it's a song called Before I Met You. I met you at the convenience store when I asked you for a pack of smokes. You told me when you got off work and you laughed at my dirty jokes. And after a while I liked your style, so I asked you to be my wife. And your old man came for me with his gun, so we eloped to save my life. Before I met you, I didn't have to lie or even try. Before I met you, I didn't need alibis. Before I met you, I never knew the many ways to lose. I just didn't have a clue before I met you. Well, we didn't have much money, and we didn't have much luck. We tore up my last paycheck for a rusted old pickup truck. And in Bitter Springs we got a room, but I couldn't find no job. And that was when we started looking for a place to rob. Before I met you, I didn't have to lie or even try. Before I met you, I didn't need alibis. Before I met you, I never knew the many ways to lose. I just didn't have a clue before I met you. We robbed the liquor store because you were thirsty, or so you said. The manager pulled out his gun, but you shot first and now he's dead. And we're wanted now in 7 states, and I'm almost out of gas. And the only thing I learned from love is the pain when it is past. Before I met you, I didn't have to lie or even try. Before I met you, I didn't need alibis. Before I met you, I never knew the many ways to lose. I just didn't have a clue before I met you. Thank you. Switching over to keyboard. I'd like to really thank the folks at Red Barn Radio for having us on tonight. This next one is, well, it's kind of a, I don't know, 70s yacht rock ballad that was written for an old high school friend that I hadn't talked to in a long time, hadn't seen in a long time, and then in a random phone call found out that they had been diagnosed with well, they thought they had cancer, and fortunately it turned out to not be that. But there was a long, several-week period where it was very uncertain. And so that kind of led into the thinking about aging and thinking about when your memory kind of goes. And And for me, the thing that always goes is like song lyrics. My own personal form of Alzheimer's disease is going to be that when everything else goes, I will remember chord progressions. Somebody will play me 2 chords, and I'll go, So this is about that also, forgetfulness and whatnot. It's a song called Persistence of Memory.
At the beginning of a song, and I thought of you. The melody stuttered, hesitated, and I fought it through. It was hazy from time, just a misshapen line. It was like a memory with the passage of time. The chords always come easy, flowing smoothly from my fingertips. But the lyrics run rudely, they elude me, and the rhyming slips. Still the song that I hear remains strong and clear, so I can write it down before it disappears. And I wish I were able to share a memory or two, receding like a freight train fading from view. This old guitar bears the scars showing where I've been, but the details decay, fade away, and turn gray and thin. But I remember you, what you're going through, and I wish I were there to share this memory with you. Oh, I remember you, and what you're going through, and I wish I were there to share this memory with you.
You. Back into the desert with this next one. This one's called Every Desert Heart. All right.
Cold black clouds gather in the distance. The insects stop their mating cry. Somewhere a door slams, hanging on broken hinges, sounding like the sound of her goodbye. Send me some rain, for my soul is parched and weary. It's been so long since I felt it on my face. Open up the clouds, let it all rain down upon me, while I wait for you in this these desert towns have names that sound so lonely. All these desert bars look the same. Every desert heart can blossom where the rains fall, waiting for the promise of the rain. Send me some rain, for my soul is parched and weary. It's been so long since I felt it on my face. Open up the clouds, let it all rain down upon me, while I wait for you in this desert place. These desert towns have names that sound so lonely. All these desert bars look the same. Every desert heart can blossom where the rains fall, waiting for the promise of the rain. Send me some rain, for my soul is parched and weary. It's been so long since I felt it on my face. Open up the clouds, let it all rain down upon me, while I wait for you in this desert place. Thank you. All right.
Here's Red Barn Radio's Brad Becker.
Kevin, that almost sounded, I don't know, Steely Dan-esque
It's another genre study.
or something.
You know, that's my attempt at writing a Steely Dan song as sung by David Crosby, perhaps.
He may be-
It's like fantasy football. You know, you kind of put these kind of like fantasy musical bands together.
David Crosby may be one of the only vocalists I can think of who was never featured as at least a background vocalist on a Steely Dan record.
And there are probably good reasons for that.
Wonder if you could talk a little bit before we talk about music theory again. Could you talk about how, in the time that you've been involved in music education at the college level, how are you seeing schools change? Are they changing with the times? Are music programs nimble enough and changing with the way that the music business is changing?
Yeah, there are a lot of exciting changes. Technology has become a much more important part. Not only things like notation software and things like that, but actually using computers in sequencing and programming, and the whole boom in home recording, for example, has led to teaching that as part of curriculum. That's music business used to be, like when I was in college, there were very few schools that had programs in music industry or music business. But now that seems to be something that's much more common. Ironically so, perhaps, as the industry itself is kind of having its its challenges of its own.
So some of the very best teachers that I've ever worked with were the teachers who were just hell-bent on making whatever they were teaching accessible. And if they couldn't do that, it just wasn't worth bothering. And I was like that, and it seems like you're that kind of teacher, even from the get-go. When you started teaching music theory, you're in your mind, you're saying, hey, what could happen here that I could have 90% success in this classroom? Was there someone who did that for you when you were a young person learning music, who really made something very challenging accessible to you?
Yes. It's funny because I was kind of thinking in a different direction here, but a lot of what I do in the classroom involves popular music, and I have a teacher of mine in college to thank for that. That was who was not necessarily somebody that would use popular music a lot in the classroom, but as we're going over chords and Roman numerals and 1, 4, 5 and things like that. And in one offhand remark, he said something about, you usually don't have 5 going to 4. You can have 4 going to 5, but not 5 going to 4. And he says, you find that in Chuck Berry, you don't find that in Bach. And I thought, bing, huh, that's kind of interesting. Why is that? And I liked the sudden unexpected appearance of Chuck Berry in my freshman theory class.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things that I try to do each year, and I've done this, since my Northwestern days, so this is going on probably 25 years that I've done this. Every fall, when I meet with my freshmen for the first time, their first assignment is to send me YouTube links to their 3 desert island pieces of music. And I say it can be any genre. The only rule is that it has to be something that I would feel comfortable playing in front of my mom. So, no, nothing misogynist, no, 4-letter words, no, any of that, but it can be any genre. And so I get an incredible variety of music from my students. They give me the Eagles, but they also give me Mahler, or they give me some band piece that they played in high school, and then the next track is Black Sabbath or something like that. And so what I do with this is I not only use this as a kind of a benchmark for where my students' musical background is, but I use it as teaching material. I go through every single recording that the students send me, and I take notes on what I hear, what kind of harmony things or this is a good example of 3/4 time or whatever, because it's freshman, you're starting with very basic things. So, here is a major chord, can even be something as simple as that. But I work these through the curriculum for my semester, alongside the usual canonic composers like Bach and Beethoven and so on. And it definitely kind of keeps the students engaged, because there's a chance that at any given moment their song is going to be used as a teaching example.
Yeah, sure. Huh. How cool. So I was going to ask you something else. Yeah. So as far as music theory goes, I referred to it earlier as sort of that dreaded chemistry class, and just because I've heard, really good musicians talk about how daunting it was to approach the discipline in a scientific way, rather than in sort of a artistic and creative way. I think that's just because that was the notion that they had about theory. Have you found that some of your students arrived at music theory that way and then came out at the end of your class understanding the link between an understanding of music theory and creative play with music?
Oh yeah, I certainly hope so. I've always been a little skeptical about the music as science or music as math. I mean, because there are proportions, and so
Yes.
we have proportions in the harmonic series, and that can be traced to math in some way. But for me, it's almost more psychology, and aesthetics, but especially psychology, because music is patterns. So if you have a musical pattern that repeats in a certain way and you predict it's going to repeat in a certain way, and it does, then the expectation is rewarded. But if it happens too much, it becomes boring. So you throw in a curveball, you throw in a chord that the listener doesn't expect, and oh, that's different. And so I'll often do that, these kind of almost mock historical compositional scenarios with my students, like, well, the composer could have done this, and I play some hypothetical completion of the phrase, but instead they did this, because they're compositional choices that are made. And so one of the things that I really stress or emphasize with my students is in integrating theory into performance, is that it's like the analogy that I like to use is an actor who's reading Shakespeare. And suppose the actor reads Shakespeare, they don't speak English at all. And their understanding of Shakespeare is a phonetic reading of English. So from that perspective of what the words sound like, maybe every word is perfectly pronounced because it's a perfect phonetic reading. But does the performer, the actor, know anything about what they're saying? Can they convey that to an audience? So as you're performing the notes, it's more than just getting the right notes. It's using those notes in a way that will draw the listener in, and using things like just slowing down ever so slightly at the right places, for example, to show the ends of musical sections and things like that. Throwing in a little crescendo when there is a musical surprise, that kind of thing. So turn that piece into a kind of drama, but you have to know where the twists in the plot are, and where the irony is, and where the humor is.
Oh, I love it. Thanks, that's very cool. Okay, another interest of yours, prog rock. So you've written a couple of books. You wrote, it sounds like three. A textbook, right? Which is the music theory book,
right?
From
Music
Oxford.
theory
And
remixed.
Then, yeah, right. And then you did another book about a Genesis album,
right? An album called "The Lamb Lies Down" on Broadway. Their last album with Peter Gabriel before he went on a solo career.
Very interesting. I'd love to talk with you in depth about that at some point. And then another book about prog rock. Right. Talk about prog rock and the fascination that genre had for you. We're talking about music of 71 through 78 or something.
69 through 1979, 1980, thereabouts. Although it survived past that.
We're talking about bands like King Crimson and Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, yes.
Sure. Yeah, short for progressive rock, so people don't know. It's not like from the city Prague.
Yes,
but progressive rock. But it was a style that, sort of the stereotypical definition of it was that it was a style of rock music that incorporated symphonic and classical elements.
Right.
So but more broadly, it incorporated jazz. It incorporated English folk music. There were even bands that were incorporating like Asian music styles. So I would say it was a style of rock that tended to move away from the blues influences that were so common in rock at the time.
Right,
and so incorporating other things.
So you had a player. So in the band, like Yes, for instance, you had Wakeman, who was at least seemed classically trained.
Yeah.
Keith Emerson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Ian Anderson, flute, and there you talk about all that British folk, influences in that music.
Yeah.
And do you think that that's an important period of rock history, or the most important?
I think
for
it's
you?
a neglected period.
Yeah.
Because
why do you think it is?
Yeah, I think the critical discourse was that progressive rock was this horrible, excessive anomaly, and thank goodness punk came along and wiped it off the map.
Which a lot of it was.
A lot of it was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right. But for me, it it's evidence of a rich period of musical experimentation. You know, the early 70s were a time that the music industry was just swimming in dough. And because of the Beatles and the success of Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road and the experiments that the Beatles had done with those albums, and the fact that seemingly like no matter what the Beatles could do, you know, Revolution 9, 8 minutes of tape effects and number 9 goes platinum. Who knew? You know, the Beatles could do no wrong, right? And so, sort of emboldened by that, the record industry was kind of in the role of an impresario, you know, that would sort of sponsor a classical composition or commission a classical work. These labels would offer a budget to a band to go into the studio and create some new album, and sometimes the bands would go into the studio with very little actually worked out. They would want to kind of discover things by working in the studio together and see what they would come up with. So it was kind of very experimental time.
Yeah. Favorite progressive rock band?
Oh.
Top three.
Well, King Crimson definitely, because that was a band that went through many different styles, and they are still together, touring in a lineup now that's something like 8 players, including 4 drummers.
Oh.
And the drummers are in the front, the drum line in front, incredible to watch. But it's basically like watching this incredibly well-trained rock chamber orchestra.
Oh, wow, cool.
The precision is amazing. So King Crimson would definitely be in my top 3. Wow.
Genesis, I would say,
Yeah,
right?
Genesis I like very much. I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah,
I really like Keith Emerson's keyboard playing. He's one of my
bet you do.
all-time favorite keyboard players. But
Too much drum from Carl?
no, too much lyrics from Greg Lake.
Oh. Well, he's gone now, isn't
You know, yeah, as is Emerson,
he?
sadly.
Yeah, right.
But and another band, another progressive rock band that I enjoy very much is a band called Magma, who were French, and
So is Magma?
I guess you could pronounce it that way. But their drummer basically created this sort of very elaborate mythology, kind of a science fiction story involving this planet called Kobaya, and he invented his own language, Kobayan. It was supposed to be the language of this planet, and trained his singers to sing in this language, which is like this rare, weird mixture of, like, I don't know, Hungarian and Klingon with lots of umlauts. and the music,
Oh, no.
and the music is this very sort of like hypnotic, minimal jazz rock fusion.
Huh.
So, but again, the level of musicianship is just amazing. And
Really?
yeah,
In your top 3, huh?
in my top 3.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
check it out. You guys, it has been so much fun. It's fun talking to you. Could do it for a long time. Glad you all are here tonight, and let's welcome them back, folks. Kevin Holm-Hudson and the Adjuncts. Thanks for being on the program tonight, Kevin.
Thank you.
Well, let's see how this that works.
Yeah.
Well,
Tell us about the next song coming up.
Yes. Well, first we'd like to invite Dan Ward to join us on the stage. And again, I am thrilled that both Roberta and Dan could be here with us tonight, because I was telling them, there is no one else I know of that does what they do. So. This is the old guitar I was writing about in Persistence of Memory. This is my high school guitar. Anyway, going back to that desert narrative, the desert journey narrative, this is the last song in that narrative. And in Schubert's cycle, in the middle of the woods in the dead of winter, he encounters this mysterious hurdy-gurdy player who just appears out of nowhere, this old man with a hurdy-gurdy organ. And he recognizes that this old man is this guide that's like a personification of death, who's going to lead him into the next world. And one of the things that he asks this hurdy-gurdy player is like, will you finish my song for me? And that's the last song in this very long song cycle. So this is the desert version of that. Our protagonist winds up somewhere in the desert where he meets the shaman, El Brujo, who is going to lead him into the next world. So this is probably where the Castaneda stuff really comes through. Between the shade and the shadow, in the silence of the sound, here is where I find El Brujo, where there's no one else around. His face is hidden in the darkness. He has a name that no one knows. He walks and yet he leaves no footprints that reveal where he goes. I have traveled such a long way. I'm at the end of my line. Have a song to teach me. I don't have much more time. I've been trying to find you. Where have you been so long? Will you send word to my sweet Margarita? Finish my song. The desert air ripples around him, waves of heat from the earth. I do not know whether I found him or if he followed me from birth. His voice is like an ancient river cut through a canyon of stone. The raven that has kept me on my journey has left me here to face him alone. I have traveled such a long way. I'm at the end of my line. Do you have a song to teach me? I don't have much more time. I've been trying to find you. Where have you been so long? Will you send word to my sweet Margarita? Gives me some strange herbal powder. My skin flushes with red heat. I feel
a surge of mystic power. The earth recedes below my feet. This incantation like an echo, fading away within my mind. The sun sinks low to the horizon. I know that now must be the time. I have traveled such a long way. I'm at the end of my line. Do you have a song to teach me? I don't have much more time. I've been trying to find you. Where have you been so long? Will you send word to my sweet Margarita? Will you finish my song? Will you finish my song? Will you finish my song? Dan Ward, everyone. Wonderful. Another guitar switch. Thank you again, everyone, for coming out tonight, braving the rain, being patient through the delayed start, and just really appreciate your all staying here this late with me tonight. Okay, so my official bio says something about my hormone-hijacked adolescence. This song is about that. This song is about high school. And it's called Invisible Boy. Saw you from a distance and I tried to catch your eye. You were hanging on the arm of some other guy. I wish I could say something, but I'm just too shy. So I shuffled my feet and went down as you walked by. I bet that you don't even know how beautiful you are. I saw you tuck your lovely legs into your daddy's car. In my world, you're as glamorous as a movie star. And I'd like to ask you out, but I know that I wouldn't get far. We could have been like Romeo and Juliet. We could have had a love affair we'd never forget. We could have gone through heartache and regret. And we could have been lovers, but you know we never even met. Did you even notice me up against the wall by the Chick-fil-A counter at the food court at the mall? If I asked you for your number, would you accept my call? Do you even take notice of guys like me at all? As you floated right past me and flicked back your hair, I caught the smell of your perfume lingering in the air. I was lost in a moment, all I could do was stare. Then your eyes caught me staring and I suddenly wished I wasn't there. We could have been like Romeo and Juliet. We could have had a love affair we'd never forget. We could have gone through heartache and regret. And we could have been lovers, but you know we never even met. Here he is, the one and only invisible boy. The only time he's noticed is when he annoys. He's completely lacking in social grace and poise, but his awkwardness is always something that we all enjoy. That's okay, it's alright, being lonesome as can be. I'm used to being somebody that girls can't see. But when he leaves you crying, I hope you will agree that you could do worse than to date a loser guy like me. We could have been like Romeo and Juliet. We could have had a love affair we'd never forget. We could have gone through heartache and regret. And we could have been lovers, but you know we never even met. You know we never even met. You know we never even met. Thank you. Okay, this next one is a sing-along. You ready for a sing-along? Okay, so this is the sing-along part. It starts off, ooh, ooh, and if you want to, you can add harmonies. Ooh, ooh, and that part comes at the end of every chorus. This is called the Goodnight Waltz. Good night, and thank you for coming. The evening has started to fade. Before we all go our separate ways, there's one last song to be played. So good night, gentlemen. The bartender says that it's the last call. Order up that one last round. This is my good night waltz for you all. Ooh, ooh, good. We'll follow them on that. Next verse. The chairs are all stacked on the tables. They're sweeping and mopping the floor. The servers all want to go home now. I can't sing these songs anymore. So good night, ladies. One last dance for the music hall. You gave this place such style and grace. This is my good night waltz for you all. Ooh, this song, pass it along, pass it on down the road. Someone might need it to brighten their heart, a melody to lighten the load. So good night, all you friends. The last song has echoed off of the walls. Angels keep you till we meet again. This is my good night waltz for you all, and we'll tag that. Angels keep you till we meet again. This is my good night waltz for you all. Your turn. Ooh. Thank you all very much.
We would like to thank Kevin, Scott, David, Roberta, and Dan for being with us here this evening. Thanks to all of you listening to our webcast, watching us on Facebook Live, and those listening to us on the Red Barn network of stations. Especially we thank WEKU, Red Barn Radio's official radio partner serving Central and Eastern Kentucky. WEKU is Kentucky's NPR station, live streaming and more information at weku.fm.
We also thank the members of our studio audience for supporting the mission of Red Barn Radio, which strives to present, promote, and preserve the rich musical tradition of this Kentucky region and share this treasure with the world. Red Barn Radio comes to you live from the Performance Hall at Arts Place in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Our website has updates and further information on our guests and on our program. We're on the web at redbarnradio.com. Tickets for Red Barn Radio are now available on eventbrite.com, Lexington.
Next week, Red Barn Radio presents My Brother's Keeper. Growing up together and surrounded by music, My Brother's Keeper has played music together for years, but not under this official band name. MBK was raised on the genres of folk, bluegrass, and gospel, so the growing popularity of folk music opened a door for MBK to take the music they love to eager audiences. MBK consists of brothers, Benjamin, Titus, and Joshua Luckhop, on guitar, mandolin, and fiddle, respectively. Wyatt Sawmill Murray completes this ensemble on his upright bass. MBK features tight four-part harmonies, rock-driven lead vocals, blazing solos, and complex and interlaced musical interludes. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Be sure not to miss Red Barn Radio next week as we welcome back My Brother's Keeper to the Red Barn stage. And do you think we could talk Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson and the Adjuncts into one more song? Let's give it up, Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson.
Somebody once told me if I started to spit with somebody once told me it would be a hit, but I'm not convinced. It kinda makes me wince till the verse like this will do in a pinch. After that rough and uninspired start, I find I'm only halfway to the sing-along part where you can all pretend and make amends with the drunk person next to you who thinks you're your friend. And this is the pre-chorus part. The minor chord hits you in the heart. Yeah, it's the sing-along song. You've all heard songs like this, so clap your hands, join in and sing along. You've heard these chords a million times before, so don't you dare act bored. It's the instant classic sing-along song. Whoa! this song, it wouldn't stop raining, so I thought this song would be better than complaining, and I lost the bet. I still got wet, but I still got a pretty good song out of Ed. A critic said my song was superficial, the music and the words were artificial. I suppose I could go all Americana, but it's just a stupid pop song and I don't wanna. This is still the pre-chorus part. The minor chord hits you in the heart. Yeah, 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 it's the sing-along song. You've all heard songs like this, so clap your hands, join in and sing along. You've heard these chords a million times before, so don't you dare act bored. It's the instant classic sing-along song. Whoa, yeah, whoa, and after the chorus I go into the bridge. I rotated the chord progression just a smidge. It adds some variety to this mediocre song, where you know you're gonna get the last chorus before long. But there's still one last pre-chorus part. The minor chord hits you in the heart. Yeah, 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 it's the sing-along song. You've all heard songs like this, so clap your hands, join in and sing along. You've heard these chords a million times before, so don't you dare act bored. It's the instant classic sing-along song. All right, now the time has come to introduce to you the Adjuncts on the drums and percussion, demolition and munitions, David Chappie Chapman. On the bass, just a small town boy, born and raised in South Covington, providing the fundamental notes that go with the drums, Mr. Scott Cape. And I'm Dr. Kevin Holm-Hudson. We are the Adjuncts. Thanks to Red Barn Radio for a great night tonight. Thanks to you all for making it great. One more time. Yeah, 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 it's the sing-along song. You've all heard songs like this, so clap your hands, join in and sing along. You've heard these chords a million times before, so don't you dare act bored. It's the instant classic sing-along song. Ho, 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 yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. If you don't already, you can follow me on Facebook. I have a music page, Holm-Hudson Music, facebook.com/Holm-Hudson Music, and that's HOLM, so it's like Stockholm, not Sherlock Holmes. And I also have a SoundCloud page where you can hear my music at soundcloud.com/Holm-Hudson.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. That's all of the program from Red Barn Radio tonight, live from Lexington, Kentucky. You can see and hear us worldwide as we stream live on the web and on Facebook Live Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern in North America. You can donate to help the continued success of Red Barn Radio by clicking PayPal link on our Facebook page or on Red Barn Radio's main page. But now from all of us here at Red Barn Radio, it is our hope that you have a terrific wait. Go well.